There's a very crafty effort to make the last bastion of something that you can overtly hate is the extraterrestrials. I mean, the hatred that was focused on me in Barcelona for talking about the oneness and the going forward in universal peace and contacting all these civilizations. I mean, I literally had people storm the stage to attack me in front of 1,400 people. So it's been inflamed deliberately by the intelligence community and, no offense to anyone, Hollywood and the media, by the caricatures that have been done. And I look at it, and I've studied the Holocaust a lot, and what you find is that the same things that were done by Goebbels and others to caricature Jewish people have been done to caricature ETs. Size, how they smell, how they look, they're here to take things from us, da-da-da-da-da. It's like the Elders of Zion on a cosmic scale is being done by most of the UFO subculture, frankly, and certainly the intelligence community working hand in glove with the media, such as the article that came out last week in the Daily Mail about this whole alien invasion scenario. And so I think that, you know, we're very concerned about this because we have got to find another way of thinking. And as Einstein said, no problems ever been solved from the level of consciousness that caused it. Okay? And so it has to be a great quote.
Yeah.
Well, not mine, it's Einstein's. But, you know, I'm paraphrasing, but it's close, I think. So that's why we have to get to this new level of how we think. And the only way to transcend that otherness is to look at what it is at our base. And it can't just be that we're all humans, because they're not. How do we find, because we can't trade world peace for interplanetary war. And there are those who would like to do that. I had an intelligence official many years ago said, yes, where we're moving towards is uniting the world, but uniting the world so we can fight the aliens. So I don't think we're moving forward if we trade, you know, factional and ideological war from one ethnic or religious or economic system or another and unite the world, a la the movie Independence Day, into an interplanetary conflict, because that's A, not survivable, and B, would be even worse in terms of galvanizing the world around a military structure for society. And that, if you look at the history of society, that has been, you know, with the white men on the, that has been the central organizing principle of our society for a few thousand years, actually. And that's what really has to change, is we have to have another organizing principle that's based on something greater than who has the most powerful gun. There's unity consciousness and the experience of the mind of each of us being the one mind. And then there's your individuality. But between those two poles is an infinite degree of relative non-locality, if this makes sense, where you can become increasingly non-local so that you can experience another person's life or be that other being. And actually, what Emery and I have been experiencing with this ET, where the magnetometer has been doing this spiraling, is exactly that. It's like we're us there, but we're also another being. And it's a complete harmonic, to the point that it's physiological. I mean, we can physiologically feel it. And it's happening in very subtle dimensions that are in the astral and causality of subtle energies. And that's kind of, you know, not what people expect when they think of a ET contact event. They expect to walk up to a flesh and blood ET and shake hands. And we have had flesh and blood ETs that have appeared. But the more likely way is these sort of trans-dimensional ways, because if you're interstellar and your whole paradigm is going beyond the crossing point of light through other various dimensions, or your civilization has evolved to these various other dimensions, it would make complete sense that that's how they would prefer to make. What I found was that there was such clarity of perception, seeing, hearing, knowing. And then what I experienced from consciousness and these two beings that came to me it was transmitted in packets of non-verbal, pure information and knowledge. And I found that almost everything that's happened in my life since then has just sort of been an unfolding of that.
Those packets?
Yes, and that's what happened with the Orion transmissions. The Orion transmissions, when I was holding up this sphere in Joshua Tree, and we had this, it was a radar detector, started, and as I tuned to a sector of Orion, then there was this download, like a step-down transformation through this crystalline structure in my bioelectric field into that, but the tone of the machine, I could feel what the information was, and it was like amazing packets of knowledge that was in energy form and not verbs, not words. And so when you're in that state, you can gain information, whether it's in a meditative state or while you're moving around, in a way that's from a very deep matrix in the structure of consciousness, which then means that you're very clear in being able to access this Ritambara Pragya, Ritam, that level of awareness where all knowledge can be accessed. And that is folded within every single person. What's beautiful to realize, that saying that thinkest thyself a puny form when within thee the universe is folded. It's a rhetorical question. The entire cosmos is folded like a quantum conscious hologram within every single person and every single being. And the realization of that, and the beginning of the experience of it, then you realize that every sentient being that it can be aware of awareness. You know, in other words, I don't think an ant, but a higher intelligent life form has the ability to be aware of the aware mind and access this level of knowledge. And that's why remote viewing and precognition is possible. The New York Times requires 3 corroborating sources for a story, and we have 550. So the fact that it's not in the New York Times is only because it's been redlined, literally, out of the New York Times. So the people who want to come forward, yes, many of them are afraid of coming forward, the closer to the heart of the secrecy you get. But what all of you know, and that if you're wanting to address people in your local community, as I said the other day, take the pulse of where they are. Don't go past where they are too far. And you can educate them. It's all about compassionate education, not proselytizing. It doesn't do any good to talk about things that someone's not ready to hear about. So if they're not receptive, as the old saying goes, the wise are they who speak not unless they have a hearer. So if there's not receptivity, you can just move on. But you'd be surprised the number of people who are, even on the things that are the high strangeness, trans-dimensional aspect of what we're doing, there's so many people ready to hear that. And more than you can imagine, but you have to kind of ease your way into it.
Yeah.
And let them ask the question that opens the opportunity.
Right.
And that's when I was briefing the CIA director and his wife, who is the chief operating officer of the National Academy of Sciences. He really didn't have an interest in the whole communication aspect of it. He was interested more in the policy implications and why he was being denied access and why they were lying to the president and to Webster Hubbell, who had been sent from the Department of Justice by the president to investigate this. But what he said to me, which was really important, what she said to me at some point during the dinner, this 3-hour meeting, was that she didn't really understand how they could communicate across these vastnesses of space. And then I had to say, well, do I tell her a lie that makes me look credible, or do I tell her the truth and risk sounding too far out there, you know? And I said, well, if she asks the question, I think she's probably ready for the truth. And I started talking about thought-actuated technologies, technology-assisted consciousness, and consciousness-assisting technologies, and that there were developed multiphasic electronic devices that could receive directed thought or also send directed thought. And that this is how the communication was happening at multiples of the speed of light across interstellar and even intergalactic distances. And she just said, you know, I thought it had to be something like that. Just like that. Here she is, the Chief Operating Officer of the National Academy of Sciences. So what that said to me is that people are more ready to hear this and learn this than we realize. It's really about people having this realization that to step forward in this and do what you need to do requires a lot of courage. It requires a lot of personal fortitude because of the ridicule factor and the social opprobrium that attends the issue, which is very, very significant, particularly if you're in a professional setting. But nevertheless, that's what needs to happen. There need to be more and more people who speak their convictions and come forward, whether they be military or other people. And I think that's one of the real challenges is, as you know, all of us leave here, is to walk that path, because it's very easy to sit on this information personally, but when you begin to bring it in to your life where people might know about it, it's very difficult. And an Air Force major once told me that the secrecy on this issue has been maintained mostly through just the fear of ridicule. All through our society, and there's 100 years where we have lost our ability, and it's not just technological evolution, it's social, economic, and even spiritual development has been deterred by this. And that's why that is such an important disclosure of that fact is really important. And this is the part of this that most people, when they think of the UFO issue, they think of either scary looking ETs or other frivolity. And they never seem to understand that the real heart of it is about cartels and a very small group of elites who want to maintain a centralized power. Because what happens when, visualize, if you will, every village in the world having one of these devices, or multiple of them, and there's no transmission lines. And you're pulling energy out of the 0-point quantum vacuum energy field. And everything can be grown locally. Everything can even be manufactured locally if necessary. You do not need to have a petrodollar-based system. You do not need to have trillions of dollars a year spent on the energy. So all that resource, you can call it resource or money, are then freed up for what? Education, healthcare, development of higher states of consciousness, what have you. And think of what could happen even in terms of the infrastructure. This house wouldn't need to have any wiring. Why? Because everything manufactured would have its own energy source. Everything changes. Imagine if you discovered an energy source that would deep six the $600 trillion oil and gas and coal reserves and the trading desks at Goldman Sachs and everywhere else. So then you're talking about real trouble. And I think that's what people have to understand. That is at the root of the secrecy of this whole extraterrestrial question. You know, it's like almost what's truth got to do, have to do with it. You know, people have more invested in their reputations. And a great story, you know, one of the things that happened, I was at Cambridge back some years ago giving a talk to Mensa, which is an alleged high IQ group. I say alleged because when you see Bijou and these other creatures that have IQs of 400 and 500, you know, I'm a moron. So anyway, but I was the keynote speaker at the international gathering at Cambridge and one of the colleges there. And I was presenting pretty left brain stuff, you know, here are the documents, here are the photos, here are the cases, here's the stuff. And this man on the front row, British guy, scientist, at the question and answer, jumped up, he says, "I find it utterly depressing that a man of your intelligence would be wasting your life on such drivel."
Drivel?
Drivel. Oh. And I said, he says, "I've been on all the top committees in the British government, and if there was any truth to this, I would have known about it." Like that, very bombastic, and I let him rant, and he sat down. And I said, "Well, with all due respect, if you didn't have a compartmented clearance to this, you wouldn't know." Because the Minister of Defense, Lord Hill Norton, who I know personally, was denied access. But if there's a 10% chance that what I'm saying is true, It would change everything on this planet. And I think it's worth pursuing, and that's why I don't think I'm wasting my life. Next question.